You mean like the MMR and the BCG? Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the stream tonight. I hope everyone is very well. Well, we're up to almost 100 viewers. That's fantastic. So let me just say hello to everyone who's on the stream. We have Pete Robbins, great to see you. Killer, thanks so much for posting all those links. Thank you so much for moderating again tonight. Wee Scott's dog, great to see you. I know you wrote something about the picture. You wanted the picture back. Unfortunately, Boris has disappeared, but Boris is back again. Sky Blaze, great to see you. David Clay, great to see you. Nicholas, great to have you on. Kenny, great to have you on once again. Una, great to see you. Will C, great to have you on. Dano, great to have you on. Great to see you also on Discord. Monkeytron, great to see you. Who else have we got? Prince Charming. I love the image you have. Yes, Prince Charming. Boris Johnson is also known as Prince Charming. No, he's not. We also have Keith. Great to have you on, Keith. K. Alter Adele. Great to have you on. Will. Great to see you on, Will. Jeff Taylor. Great to have you on, Jeff. Trump goes nuts. Isn't that the norm? Yes, it is. I suppose, how can you go nuts if you're already nuts? Lenny Harry, great to have you on, Lenny. The Tiny Demolition Lover, great to have you on. Hope you're well. Macs are better than PCs. Great to see you. Sean, great to have you on. Wonder if Max would wear his hat tonight. I always wear the hat. I even wear it in the shower. Ralph, great to see you. Mora, great to have you on. Miles, great to have you on. Magister, great to see you once again. Jamie Bow, great to have you on. Who else have we got? Eric Rocky, great to have you on, Eric. Wardy, great to see you. Mark Iffy, great to see you once again. Obi Don, great to have you on. Obi Don Kenobi. I said hello to Sean. Matt Greek, great to see you. Ministerian, great to have you on once again. Night Raven, great to have you on. And moderating, of course. Archangel, great to see you. Good morning from Australia. I guess it's morning, still morning in Australia. We also have Frank, great to see you, Frank. Just going through quickly everyone who's on the stream. Paul, great to see you, Paul. Pops, Mark Dunphy, great to see you. Christian, great to have you on once again. We have Hi Calamarte, great to have you on. Killer, great to see you. Great to see you. You were on from the very beginning. Ramon, great to have you on. Nicholas, SJ, Connor. Who else have we got? Cap Spread, great to see you. Stanley Beckett, great to have you on. John O'Sullivan. Who else? No Disassi, great to see you. Who else? Oops, I missed a few people here. Liz Taylor, anything to Jeff or the other Liz Taylor. Great to have you on, Liz. Paul McHugh, great to have you on. Then we also have, I'm sure I missed someone. Apologies if I've missed anyone. Glasgow Kiss, great to see you, Glasgow. Mari and Connor, Miss Grumpy Piggy. Don't be too grumpy. I hope you're not too grumpy tonight. So I hope everyone is very well. Welcome again once again to Max's stream. Ross Finley, great to see you, Ross. I hope everyone's well. So welcome to the stream. This stream is normally on Tuesday evening and Friday evening. So I want to start off with let's see, with Boris Johnson, of course. So tonight we're going to talk about Boris Johnson and, of course, the pandemic, but also Boris Johnson and his voyage of discovery in Scotland. So and of course his cousin across the pond in the United States. Boris took her arms. So let's hear what Boris has to say. So Boris here is actually making a lot of sense for a change. So let's hear what he has to say about anti-vaxxers. So I'll just have some comments on that as well.
You mean like the MMR and the BCG and all that kind of stuff? Because there's all these anti-vaxxers now, isn't it?
Well, Marina can tell you a little bit about how we've achieved that.
Marina, what do you think of anti-vaxxers?
Well, yes, we've changed a lot of our practices since they've come, and we've changed our 6-week checks to 8-week baby checks with including the vaccine. We ring parents, making sure we've got a recall system and get them in for their vaccines. Our rate's quite high at the moment because we're getting them in.
Boris shouldn't really insult anti-vaxxers because, you know, a lot of them probably voted for him.
Today in England, it's face mask day where the regulations come in. How long can we realistically expect to be wearing face masks for? This is going to be in place for a year, for 18 months, for 2 years, isn't it?
Well, it depends, Sam. The use of face masks, the use of all the social distancing measures really does depend on our ability collectively to get the pandemic right down and to keep it down. I'm not going to...
But you've been talking about how we've got it down and now we're easing the lockdown. Now you're still talking about having it down, getting it down. Getting it down to what level? I think he should just be honest and say, look, we're going to have we're going to have to wear masks for the foreseeable future. Leon, great to have you on. I'll just say hello to everyone. Dude, great to see you, dude. Aaron, great to have you on. And Ollie, great to see you.
Make a prediction about when these various social distancing measures will come off. Obviously, we've been able to reduce some of them.
Sorry, the volume levels are a bit off. Let me see if I can adjust that.
We no longer ask people to stay at home. We're trying to get back much closer to normal. But our ability to dispense with the social distancing measures will depend on our continued ability to drive down the virus. I'm not going to give you a trigger point, a trigger moment, but we need to make sure that we've really got it under control. We're able to stamp on local outbreaks, and we've really.
I love the way he's so visual in his explanation. We have to stamp on these outbreaks. We have to punch those viruses in the face. You know, okay.
Greatly reduced the risk of a second spike. So my message to people over the next few months is, we've done very well. The virus is under control in this country to a very large extent, but it is still there. And if you look at what's happening in other countries, there is clearly a risk that it could come back again. So we do need to maintain those social distancing measures. We do need to keep washing our hands in shops, on public transport, in places where you're going to be close to people that you don't normally meet. Face coverings are a good idea, and that will remain the case until we've made a lot more progress.
I love Sky Blazes. An uppercut to COVID. These showman gestures. What people like about Bozo, yes, exactly. Don't laugh at him. He's a horrible, dangerous human being. I'm laughing because there is no alternative. Boris Johnson. Why am I laughing too much now? I think it's because of the comments about an uppercut to COVID. Because Boris Johnson is Jesus. I'm already breaking. Boris Johnson is a joke. We have to laugh at Boris Johnson. Okay, I can't stop now. I don't know why that's the case. Okay. Let me just read some of your comments here before we go ahead. This is, I hope you mentioned the tragic passing of Michael Brooks. Yes, I posted a comment earlier in the week on the day he passed, and it was shocking. He was, if you don't know, I would recommend people check out Michael Brooks, his channel. He was on the Young Turks when he started out. A fantastic commentator. Really, he had his finger on the pulse, and he was pushing hard for progressive issues. He was pushing hard for the working class, and sadly he was taken away from us. I didn't agree with all of his policies, all the things that he supported. For example, UBI, he was quite critical of UBI, but apart from that, he was a great commentator and great progressive, and someone really pushing the envelope for the working class. And YouTube is much lesser without him. Okay, let's move on. Sorry, just read some of your other comments. Boris Ali, greatest of all time. Rumble in Westminster, Boris versus COVID, the heavyweights. Going to be a good night if that's how it started. Maybe it's good as Boris Johnson's obesity plan. Yes. So I wanted to talk actually about that. I just want to bring it up. Boris Johnson, I'll bring it up later actually. Boris Johnson's obesity plan. So I just want to go once again into, we're going to have a look at the current crisis, of course, COVID, and how it affects different parts of society. Rocky 2020. So there's this shocking story in The Guardian about UK working mothers are sacrificial lambs in coronavirus childcare crisis. So we know that let me just move this down. Oh, I don't know why this is all dark. Why is it all dark? Damn it. It's not normally dark from The Guardian. Let me try again. Apologies about that. Let me just try once again. Ah, damn it. Okay. Fantastic. All right, I'll move on to the high contrast extension. I really don't understand why it's doing that. It didn't do it before. Dark times. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on. Let me see. I'll try something else. Maybe this will work instead. Apologies for all of these. No, not browser. Okay, apologies about that, guys. So let's move on. So it says here, working mothers are sacrificial lambs in coronavirus childcare crisis. Oh, we have this notification again. Okay. It says women are being treated as sacrificial lambs as the UK's economy contracts, with half of working mothers unable to access the childcare they need to return to work, according to a survey exposing the scale of the UK's childcare crisis, as the government was accused by MPs from both sides of the political divide of ignoring and sidelining women in its response to the coronavirus pandemic. The study reveals that a lack of childcare played a role in the job losses of almost half of the women made redundant since the pandemic hit. It also revealed that in the last 4 months, 67% of key workers were forced to reduce their hours because of a lack of access to childcare. 60% struggled with childcare provision, and 45% did not have childcare in place, the childcare in place they needed over the summer. Of the 1,756 pregnant key workers who responded to the survey, 30% had been suspended on incorrect terms, such as being told to leave, to take sick leave, or to start maternity leave immediately. So this is one of the issues that's, of course, affecting many people, because of another aspect of coronavirus that's affecting many people. And we're going to see going ahead how those who don't have huge amounts of money are going to suffer. Yes, guys, hit that like button. It helps the stream, gets more people on the stream. We're starting to see this divide between the rich and the poor once again. And the virus has also been discriminatory in this. If you have money, you can afford childcare. If you don't have money, you have to go and work, even if you risk putting yourself at risk of contacting the virus. The idea that there isn't childcare available for these women is just another example of how the Tories don't really give a crap about the working class. They reach out to the working class in order to get the vote, but as soon as the people vote for the Conservatives, they ignore them and ignore their problems. The failure to put access to childcare at the heart of government policy risks sending women back to the 1970s, said Caroline Noakes, the Conservative MP who chairs the Women and Equality Select Committee. She called the lack of single reference to childcare in the summer mini budget shocking. This was the mini budget by the Chancellor. The specific needs of women are not on anyone's agenda right now, she said. In order to even stand still on gender equality at this moment, you would need need real drive and ambition, but we're not seeing anyone grasp that. The lack of focus has had dire consequences for women's future earning power, said Tulip Sadid, the Shadow Minister for Children and Early Years. It's like a throwback to the Dark Ages, and I'm feeling like I'm banging my head against a brick wall. This is not a cabinet. Whoops, it moved. I lost that. This is not a cabinet that listens to women. So we can see here in this graph, more than half of employed women and mothers say lack of childcare has had a negative impact on how they are perceived and treated by their employer. This is a huge issue, outside also the pandemic. If many employers would prefer to hire men because men don't have children generally. So, I just want to respond to Christian says wrong, Maximilian. People can afford childcare because they work. Once money dries up, both end is closed. How bad is it for the poor? I think about order some of these days. Tories haven't accomplished anything in the last decade. Hi, Mrs. VSN. Welcome to the stream. In any union, all member states should agree to Brexit. Scotland did not agree. You have a problem, England. You blew it. It's a different discussion. But I just want to stay on this. So you can see here in this, 81% said they need childcare to work. 72% have worked fewer hours for lack of childcare. So this is, of course, impacting the economy. And this is going to have a knock-on effect. You know, if you have people working fewer hours, they're producing less. Means the economy is producing less. There's less money for the exchequer. The exchequer either borrows or it cuts services. And I think that's what's going to happen going ahead. These women who have given up careers in order to look after their children because there is no childcare available, or very little, or it's very expensive, is going to have a knock-on effect later on. 49% has insufficient childcare in place. 33% forfeit childcare spaces due to COVID-19. And of those who had been or expected to be made redundant, 49% said lack of childcare played a role. So this is just one of the problems we're going to see come to fruition later after the pandemic. According to the Pregnant Then Screwed survey, they questioned working mothers, and we just read that graph, with experts warning that millions of female workers could be shut out of the coronavirus recovery because of the crisis in childcare. A group of campaigners, unions, think tanks, and providers have formed a coalition for better childcare in an attempt to force the government to produce major rescue package for the industry. It's really a case of the government don't care and someone else has to pick up the pieces. Okay, let's move on. I'll just move on to the next. So I want to, of course, talk about the pandemic, and we're going to come to Scotland in a little bit. So I'll just open this. What's interesting is, let me see, it's about Donald Trump. Let me find if I can. Oh, it's further down. Okay. So Donald Trump, so in this interview with Barstool Sports founder David Putney, the president also appeared nostalgic for his pre-White House life. You know, if you're so desperate, you know, if being president is so bad, why don't you just resign? So let's hear let's hear what Donald Trump had to say. But before we jump to that, I just want to see some of your comments. Marx's writing on the family is still as relevant today. Even Gramsci, who saw the family as another ideological state apparatus. I agree. Barstool, exactly. It's a weird name. No offense to you Americans, I love you Americans, but you guys have weird names. Except Kenny. Kenny has a great name. Trump spells genius with a J. What did he say? I'm a stable genius, you know. You can't see me because I'm waving my hands around, but imagine me waving my hands around like Trump does. You know Trump is making up bullshit when he starts waving his hands around. Anyway, enough of me. Let's hear what the stable genius had to say. Hopefully you can hear this, so I'll try and work with the volume.
I'm sure you've been asked this. It's one of the questions that I had when I was thinking what I would ask you here, because you, theoretically, for somebody like me who's sports, entertainment, having fun, you had the dream life, seemingly. Yeah. And there's a part of me that's like, I wonder if he ever, And I know the answer is going to be no, regrets it, because now, I mean, you're the most famous person.
It's not that he regrets. Why did he become president? To enrich himself. Why does he want to stay president? To avoid jail. You know, it's the same as Berlusconi in Italy. Berlusconi became president in a sort of reverse way. Berlusconi wanted to become prime minister of Italy because he knew that if he was prime minister, he would be immune to prosecution. So to become prime minister, he would avoid prison, because Berlusconi has had multiple connections with very questionable characters. And Donald Trump is exactly the same. But I think Donald Trump wanted to become president. I think in the first stage, Trump wanted to become president because he wanted to boost his ego and to enrich himself, but in a sense to promote himself. Because part of Trump's business model is that he puts his name on buildings. Hi Glenn, great to see you. So Trump puts his name on buildings, not buildings that he owns, but other people own, in order to jack up the price. So people see, oh look, well not now obviously, but in the past, I really don't understand what goes through people's heads where they would want to live in a tower with the name Trump on it. Anyway, some people do. And the idea being, okay, a developer builds a tower block, and they say to Trump, look, can we put your name on it? If we do, we'll give you some money, of course, and people will think you own it, and they will want to live there, and they'll pay us a huge premium for that. So Trump won, the developers won, and the customer was screwed. And also the customer was screwed in another sense, because later when they discovered that these buildings were made of crap, substandard material and whatever, or didn't follow the right standards, they would go to complain to Trump, and Trump would be like, this is not my building. It belongs to someone else. And then they'd start litigation with these other people who were normally, had disappeared, or were no longer operating, or were part of shell companies or whatever. Really, a really dirty business. And Trump was part of that, and he probably wanted to promote himself. If I run for president, even if I lose, I'm still going to promote myself. How many more buildings will I be able to stick my name on? And then when he won, it was like, oh crap, I've won. Now what do I do? Well, I'm here. I might as well enrich myself. Set up companies in Saudi Arabia. I think it was something like 200 companies Donald Trump set up in Saudi Arabia in the first year. No, while he was president-elect. He wasn't even president yet, and he was already corrupting the White House. And he set up something like 200 companies in Saudi Arabia to profit in real estate. He was meant to give away all of his interests, or at least declare them, and he did neither. And now he has nostalgia for the good old days.
In the world, my guess is nobody ever said, hey, I don't like Donald Trump before he became president, but now everyone has an opinion, and your life has changed forever, when seemingly you had the dream life beforehand.
I was in so many rap songs.
I know.
Like 79 or something. I was in every rap.
Please go back to being just a rap song lyric. Please do that. I think the world would heave a sigh of relief.
This is before I did this, right? It's a very interesting thing that you say, because the best day in my life in terms of business and life and everything was the day before I announced I'm running for president. Everything was good. The company was good. I had finished up a lot of jobs that were very successful.
You notice that Trump never talks about what he has actually done for people. It's all about him. I have succeeded. I have done the greatest trade deals. I have done this. I have done that. I have made America great again. It's all about him. It's not like, there are people in Michigan who didn't have jobs and now they have jobs. There are people who were, who weren't able to afford childcare, for example, now they can. Or people weren't able to access their doctors, now they can because of what I have done. You haven't done anything. But he doesn't even lie about that. It's all about what, I have done this, I have, I'm so great. Don't I deserve respect because I'm so great?
And then I said, I want to do this. Now, I'm really glad I did, but I was treated very unfairly with fake Russia, Russia, and Ukraine, all fake stuff. It's
Russia is fake? Oh my God. Does Vladimir Putin know that Russia is fake? Okay. I know he's talking about this fake investigation. Well, the investigation was not fake. There was an investigation. Russia is not fake because there is a country, a federation. So which part is fake? The allegations were fake?
It's a very vicious business. Somebody said, who's the toughest in the world to deal with? Is it Russia? Is it China? Could it be North Korea? I said, no, the toughest is the United States. It's the toughest to deal with. When you look at what I have to do, I have to focus on the big picture. But
just watch Trump. When he starts to speak and he starts moving his hands around, this is when Trump is in inventing mode. This is when Trump says, okay, now I have to invent something to say. When he has his hands down, he's telling things as they are in his mind. Now, they can be completely confused, but it's not something that he is inventing at the moment. When he starts moving his hands around, this is... I'm not an expert on this, but it seems to me there's a correlation to when Trump is inventing bullshit and him moving his hands around.
But I also have to focus. I have so many people on the left, or call them Democrats, call them whatever you want. And then you look at what they're doing with cities. Every city is run by a liberal Democrat, and they're going to hell. And we have to do something. We just sent people into Chicago. We sent people into Portland, as we said. We're sending people into New York to help out. It's incredible. But I love doing it. But there was this, phony deal that I was devastated.
So it's horrible. It's the most difficult job in the world, but I love it. Thank you very much, Glasgow Kiss, for that kind donation. Just see what...
Did that when I won, because I couldn't have my life. I had a great life. I did. One thing that happened, I was going into a thing called the Robin Hood Foundation. I'll never forget it. It was just about the night I announced or whatever.
The Robin Hood Foundation. Somehow I imagine it's completely different to anything Robin Hood stood for. Artemis, great to see you. Hope you're well. Congratulations on your job interview and your job. I'm not going to say too much more. That's your business. I don't want to broadcast it here.
And my wife looked at me. She said, I hear people booing. And she was with me for a long time. We've been together a long time. She said, some people are booing. I said, yeah, but some people are also clapping.
If somebody's booing, my question, if I was walking around and people were booing me, my first question was, why are these people booing me? And his response is, no, it's not. Some people are. Which wife? That we need to know that one, Una, yes. Which wife is he talking about? I'd like to wonder, why are people booing me? No, but Donald Trump is... People are booing me, but people are also cheering. Tremendous cheering.
Wildly. I said, no. She said, you know what? I've been with you a long time. I've never heard anyone boo you. This was right after I started being the politician. And it meant something because I said, it's the first time in my life I was ever booed. You know the story.
Right,
I'd go to...
My God, this guy is so privileged. He's never had anyone insult him, never had anyone question him. He's lived a life where everything was handed to him. And now he had someone challenge him, someone say, you're not that great. You're not the greatest person. You're not the golden boy. And this is such a shock for him.
Yankee Stadium, people
Yeah.
go. I had it was close to who's 100%, but it was
it's a
pretty
dream
close.
life.
And now, I would say this, I have more fervor on the one side, and I have far more animosity on the other side.
That's the vibe I get. This is my DNA, but I'm
Yeah.
not president. I feel like so many interviews, they're always coming from an agenda, positive or negative. And what I notice, I think, is you come at you hard, you just come back harder. And that's a very different thing for the president. I mean, I'm the president of Barstool, but people would say, is it presidential, is it not? And you just do your thing and it wins. I wondered that. Like, here's a hypothetical. If the perfect candidate, let's not say Republican, Democrat, came along and said, if we make him president, this country is going to be prosperous, everyone's going to get along, would you step aside?
I mean, I don't know that such a person exists.
Probably not.
And I should say, yes, absolutely I would, okay? So let me say it that way, because
Yeah.
that's a much more...
Does this guy not understand that he's speaking to a narcissist? You don't ask a narcissist, is there someone better than you? Donald Trump can't there is no one better than Donald Trump for Donald Trump. Even Jesus Christ isn't better than Donald Trump. Donald would say, like, me and Jesus are neck and neck, but I have that edge. What a barstool. It's just, what a terrible journalist. This is not even journalism. This is just ass kissing.
politically correct. Absolutely.
You're not known to be politically correct.
Yeah, but it doesn't work that way
Yeah.
because it just doesn't.
Why not? If I had Donald Trump in front of me and I was asking him questions, I'd be asking him about policy. Why do they have these interviews? Oh, Mr. President, you're so cool. Can you think of anyone cooler than you? No. Yeah, you're probably right. There's no one cooler than you. What sort of interview is this? Ask him about friggin' policy. Why did you support this? Why did you not support this? Why are there, 150,000 people dead on your watch? What do you have to say to those people? What do you say, to those families? How do you answer to those? If there's a person who has lost a loved one, what do you say to that person? Demonstrate you have some friggin' humanity. Instead of, oh, you're so cool. Can you think of someone cooler? No, yeah, you're probably right. There's no one cooler than you, Mr. President. For fuck's sake.
Doesn't, unfortunately. But I really believe success. We were there. Everybody was working. Everybody was just, probably you. I don't know how you're doing now, but you were probably doing better 4 months ago.
Well, I got into the stock market right when it went up. So
okay, well, you got in. You got in at the right time.
This is probably why Donald Trump is going to lose. I think he's probably going to lose. I'm not betting that he will lose. This complete and utter disconnect. You did well because you had money in the stock market. 90% of stock is owned by about friggin' 20% or even 10% of the population. 90% of the stock in the stock market is owned by about 10% of the population, the top 10%, the richest people in the United States. So when they talk about, the stock market is up, that means America is doing great. No, it's not. It's doing good for some. Did the interviewer just put lipstick on? It's doing good for some, but for the vast majority of people, they're not benefiting.
But a lot of people that had the 401ks,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're doing phenomenally, but a lot of people sold stock. And now they're saying, I missed it. And I said to people, don't sell, just don't sell. Because the foundation is so strong, don't sell. But
Don't sell what? What do you mean, don't sell? Shares, if you're talking about, if you're giving advice to shareholders or people who are investing in the stock market, you buy and sell all the time. Shares go up and down. Even Apple shares have gone up and down over the last number of years. Mainly up, but they do go down from time to time. Only 20% of Americans are even invested in the stock market. And those 20% are people with, most of those are probably people with at least $1 million. 401ks, yeah, now banks are trying to rob people of them. They're thirsty for grandpa's retirement money. Don't sell your soul. Wow.
People that really lost in terms of economic are the people that got out. The people that stayed in, they stayed with me, they're doing great. And we're almost at record highs.
Okay.
And what about the people... Lenahan, thank you so much for that kind donation. Thank you so much. But what about the people who lost their frigging jobs? Not people who lost some money in the stock market. People who lost their frigging jobs. What about them? People who are not able to find another job after this frigging coronavirus pandemic. What about them? Did they lose? Or did they don't count? How many of these? Or maybe I'm just thinking of a small minority of people here. I'm thinking of maybe 3 million people who are now unemployed. Or maybe more than that, because these are official figures. So you can add a bit extra to find the real number. Because I think in the United States at the moment, they're not counting people who are not looking for jobs. And many people have just given up because they can't find a job. We're almost at the end of this, I promise.
The last thing, I'm going to wrap this up. And this, we ask for permission. You can say no if you want to do it. My dad and I have had debate.
And you can say no if you don't want to do it. What sort of friggin' interview is this? Mr. President, I'm going to ask you a difficult question. Do you like puppies or kittens? But don't answer that if you don't want to, okay? That's I'm not here to ask you gotcha questions.
Debates forever. He's not the biggest fan of yours. What I want to do is kind of a prank. I just told he doesn't know I'm even here. But we've talked a lot. I want to call him, FaceTime him, and just he'd die if he saw that I was with you.
Go ahead. You
cool
can do
with
it
that?
quickly, right?
Yeah, it'll take
Good.
2 seconds. He knows
Good.
it's coming. This is going to be...
Oh, he does. That's bad.
no, it's,
Yeah, I'm lost for words here. The President of the United States is wasting time with yahoos, barstools. Barstools is a sports channel, okay. Thanks for that information. It's a fluff puff piece. But really, this is the best use of the president's time.
That's too bad.
no, this is going to
We have to see this. I'm sorry.
be absolutely great. Let me get the thing here. I have it all set. This will take 2 seconds. Dad, this is...
It's like, can you imagine? There's a staffer, off camera going, okay, we need to speak to the president. Japan has been attacked by North Korea, and China is invading Vietnam at the moment, and India at the same time. Can we speak to the president? We need to get him to respond to this. He's like, no, he's doing a FaceTime with some stool guy. Like, what the? What? The stool guy? They're doing FaceTime with the stool guy. Yes, but we're on the edge of World War III here. Who the fuck is this stool guy?
It's going to be...
Is he a good dad?
He's a great dad.
Good.
All right, I will put you on. We'll do it.
Don't worry about socially distancing.
No, I'll come from this. Hey, I got a question for you. What would you ask this guy, Dad?
Don't worry about social distancing. This is all a big joke for Trump. So he didn't respect social distancing because he's standing right next to the idiot. And neither of them are wearing masks. I know they're outside, but shouldn't they be wearing masks because they're less than 6 feet or 2 meters away from each other.
I know. Trista sent me something, so I'm not shocked.
The goal was to shock. We've had a very good interview.
And you have a very talented son. Good guy.
Really?
Yeah, the father doesn't give a crap. The father's like, yeah, right, okay, whatever. What was Trump crapping here? Oh my god, this is just insane. Okay, let's move on. We're not going to watch the other parts, but this is just really insane. This is the best use of the president's time. Now, also in Trumpville, the White House, this is where I was actually wanting to get to, but there was an impromptu video there. White House says schools are essential places of business. Yes, you heard that right. Schools are essential places of business. Of course, private schools. White House Press Secretary Kaylin McEnany once again defended Trump's push to reopen schools despite concerns about the spread of the coronavirus in the classroom. It is our firm belief that our schools are essential places of business. Essential places of business. Can you get any more neoliberal than that? If you will, that our teachers are essential personnel. Let's hear what she had to say.
Dr. Brooks noted that today, unless kids have an underlying condition, but she said they do not know how rapidly they can spread it still if they're under 10, and that's one of the president's top advisories.
So on the transmission point, I point you again to the CDC, but I would also say that it is our firm belief that our schools are essential places of business, if you will, that our teachers are essential personnel. You all here are considered essential workers, which is why you were coming into the briefing room every day during the pandemic. Our meat packers were meat packing because they were essential workers. Our doctors were out there treating because they're essential workers, and we believe our teachers...
Doctors and meat packers are essential workers. Really? You need to send teachers back into schools because schools are essential businesses. Could you not even pretend to use the propaganda right? Could you not say something like they're essential services? Stay focused, Paul McHugh. Kayla's first line as press secretary was, "I will never lie to you." like the meme that I posted some time ago is she's hot. Paul is very annoying. DoorDash is an essential worker in America. Wow. Meat packers are on the same level as doctors.
Teachers are essential. Particularly, I pore over the data on schools often, and the one thing that really stuck out to me, I read through the entirety of the CDC guidelines, was that...
Yeah, I imagine you did.
I talk about child abuse often, and 1 in 5 cases being reported in schools. Well, the CDC guidelines went on to say there has not just been a sharp decline in reports of suspected maltreatment, but tragically a notable increase in evidence of child abuse when children are seen for services during the pandemic.
How is that relevant to sending the kids back to school? You say, oh, so children are being abused at home by their parents, so we need to send them to school. Really, is that your way of thinking? Is that her way of thinking? That, yet there's a problem at home, so let's send the children to school instead of dealing with the problem at home. Why are there problems at home? Really, this is just blowing my mind. It's the idea that, yeah, children were being maltreated at school. This declined because they were at home. Now it has increased because they're at home, so we need to send them back to school again. instead of actually understanding what the problem is. Why are they being maltreated at home? Is it because there aren't services for these children? Because, well, our states don't, some of our states have decided to cut taxes for the billionaires, so we've had to cut services because we have no more money left. Or we've asked the police to do this service, and the police are overstretched, or the police are not trained to do this. This is insane. It's like we have a problem. The problem has declined. Now that we're sending people, now we haven't fixed the problem. We just moved the problem. The problem has returned. So let's move it back to the previous situation instead of actually trying to deal with the friggin' problem. You will touch on the Ted Yo-Yo and AOC incident. Yes, I will. I will. I need to... I'll actually do it now, just in a moment, because there was another aspect about what's happening in Portland I wanted to talk about. So in the United States, of course, this is just so insane at the moment. So what's happening in Portland, Oregon, the main city in Portland, in Oregon, sorry. Federal agents have been sent in by the federal government, by Donald Trump, basically, to quash protests. Federal agents are going to states to suppress freedom of expression in those states. Now, where are all the people who have M16s and AR-15s strapped to their backs when they go to the supermarket? And when you ask them, why do you have these guns? Well, we need to defend ourselves from the oppressive government. Where are these people now? Hiding in their bunkers, polishing their weapons and their guns. Yeah, really, where are these people? Why aren't they standing up for freedom of expression? Why aren't they standing up to the corrupt, oppressive federal government who are encroaching on people's liberties? I've called these people out before. They're charlatans, they're hacks, they're hypocrites. They're not interested in actually dealing with civil liberties. They're not interested in that. What they're interested in is just promoting their side of the political divide. We're conservatives. When the conservative is in power, we're fully behind them. When the liberal is in power, when Obama was in power, he's an oppressive dictator. And we need our guns to defend ourselves against him. This is just a complete sham. Anyway, let's see what she had to say. So this is, of course, in Portland. Federal agents have been sent to the city to suppress people's liberties.
I hope someone kills your whole family.
That wasn't me, homie.
I hope they kill you too. I hope someone burns down your whole precinct with all y'all inside. Can't wait to see it.
As you can see, that is anything but a peaceful protest.
All right. We were not expecting that video, and our management here at Fox News has decided we will pull away from that at this time. I want to bring in...
Wow. So Fox News cuts out of White House briefing. So what's happened here is the White House have created their own propaganda, and they take snippets of comments from different people at protests, put them together, and deliver it to the media and say, this is what's happening in these countries, in these cities, sorry. And even Fox News is surprised by this. Now, I could be more cynical and say that Fox News pretended to be surprised by this. I don't know which side I fall on, whether they're legitimately surprised or actually pretending to be and pulling it at the last minute to say, oh, look, we're shocked. How dare you, Mr. President? But Trump was upset about the media in his eyes misrepresenting him. So he invented his own propaganda. Instead of using Fox News as his propaganda wing, he invented his own. And I've talked about this before, how they would use a selection of images, normally at night, normally of violent protesters, and use that as a tool to paint everyone who is protesting either peacefully or non-peacefully as a violent protester. You know, the vast majority of protests are peaceful. There are some people who are violent. There's no getting away from that. But they are a very small minority. But of course, Trump wants to use them as a tool to paint everyone as a violent protester because it benefits him politically. I want to show you, let's just take a little bit of a break from this for a moment, because I want to lighten the mood a little bit. So, but staying on Donald Trump for a moment, let me just open this.
One trick is to tell them stories.
Okay. So, I want to say, I think it was Killer. Thank you, Killer, for this amazing video. So this is Donald Trump being Donald Trump imitating or being imitated by Grandpa Simpson from The Simpsons. So it's a very short clip, but just to lighten the mood a little bit.
One trick is to tell them stories that don't go anywhere. Like the time I caught the ferry over to Shelbyville. I needed a new heel for my shoe. So I decided to go to Morganville, which is what they call Shelbyville in those days. So I tied an onion to my belt, which was the style at the time. Now, to take the ferry cost a nickel, and in those days, nickels had pictures of bumblebees on them. Give me 5 B's for a quarter, you'd say. Now, where were we? Oh, yeah. The important thing was that I had an onion on my belt, which was the style at the time. They didn't have white onions because of the war. The only thing you could get was those big yellow ones.
Okay. Oh, my God. Okay. Let's move along. Now, of course, let's move back. I'll come back to Alexandria Cortez later, but I just want to look at the other side of the pond once again with Boris Johnson.
Has been inside.
So Boris Johnson, to the love of, maybe the love or the hate of the Scots, Boris Johnson has decided to travel north of the border into Scotland, into bandit country. Well, the response was not the best. So let's, whoops, I need to reduce that.
This RAF base this afternoon on the other side of a rather high fence up here in the northeast of Scotland, and earlier on he was in remote Orkney talking up the case for the union, making the link with the pandemic response in Scotland. Why? Well, surely he's seen the polling showing continued support for independence. Next year there are crucial Holyrood elections, and a big SNP majority would make it harder for Boris Johnson to continue to resist a referendum, as he did again today. And of course there is no love lost between Boris Johnson and Nicola Sturgeon, and even by those standards her response to his visit today was remarkably blunt, and it does feel like the moment that the pandemic became part of this independence debate.
You got it? Boris Johnson on Orkney, armed with a crab and an argument that nowhere is out of reach of the UK government's coronavirus response.
Okay, so I'm quite ignorant on this. Why is Boris Johnson in Orkney? Is Orkney an island of Tory support in Scotland? He found a bigger fridge. throw him overboard. I just love your comments, guys. Not one charge was made by federal law enforcement in Poland, in Portland. Why? Because the law cannot. It's all for show. Wonder what wonder what the cost for taxpayers. I agree. Yeah, it's going to be. Sorry, Bozo catches crabs. It's far away from sturgeon. He's had his tea. As far away from Edinburgh as possible. The crab is like an alien. Yes, it is. These are the crabs that will be sold after Brexit, I imagine. To who?
The merits of the union are very, very strong. They've been proved throughout this crisis, and what we want to do now is, why I'm here in Orkney, is to show how we can not just deal with the health crisis, but work to deal with the economic consequences together, building back better, investing in green technology and a green recovery.
Something of a reboot then of the case for the union from a man for whom Scotland is hardly his happy place. His Tories lost almost half their Scottish seats in the general election, and it's the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon who have momentum. The First Minister likes to say politics has no place at this public health podium, but the question was asked, and it was a stinging response.
The Prime Minister has been talking directly about the pandemic response, and he has said that it has shown the sheer might of the union.
Okay, so I promise I'll let Nicola Sturgeon respond. The idea, Boris the Builder. Well, I've talked about this before. Once again, I'm going over old ground here. But if the union was strong, of course the centre would be Westminster, and the centre would be making the best decisions. And Boris Johnson has come out recently and said, yeah, we made some mistakes. Lib Dems Max Alistair Carmichael, proven liar in court, Boris feels at home. This idea that the union is stronger now, the union is probably at its weakest point since the 1700s, since Bonnie Prince Charlie came across the sea. That's how weak the union is at the moment. I've talked about this before, and I know Scottish people don't like me to say this, but when Scotland becomes independent, they should build a statue to Boris Johnson, because he has been probably the strongest motivation for independence since I don't know when. The same in Northern Ireland. When Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland become a united country eventually, which is, it's heading in that direction. I've said it before, Boris Johnson, the arse in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, when they become a united country, they should probably build a statue to Boris Johnson, because he has done more for a united Ireland than Sinn Féin and the IRA have managed in 100 years. Of course, I'm being ironic here, but yeah, I shut up now. I don't want to lose subscribers.
Scotland, do you think he has a point?
No, I don't, and for a couple of reasons. As I've said, some of the things I think he references are simply a feature of where power lies. If Scotland was an independent country, then just like Ireland or many of the other small countries, we'd be doing these things ourselves. I just don't think any of us should be championing and celebrating a pandemic that has taken thousands of lives as some example of the pre-existing political case we want to make.
Just make the comparison between Boris Johnson, who's always, we're doing so great, everything is fantastic, we've knocked the COVID on its arse. But be careful. Stay alert. It's on its arse, but stay alert. It could bounce back at any time. And compare that to Nicola Sturgeon, who's businesslike. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean it in a positive sense. She sounds like a professional. If I didn't know, I would imagine she was the chief medical officer, or she was a senior civil servant who was presenting this. Arse. Well, Boris Johnson sounds like someone you pulled off the street. Just imagine for a moment, listen to Boris Johnson, the way he speaks about the pandemic. I'm not talking about other issues, but just about the pandemic. The way he speaks about the pandemic, it's almost as if you just pull someone off the street and ask them to talk about it. And you compare that to Nicola Sturgeon. Imagine for a moment Nicola Sturgeon is not a politician. She sounds like someone who's a professional, chief medical officer or a civil servant, someone who's not political, who's not throwing politics into this. She's responding at this moment to politics because Boris Johnson has injected politics into this. But the contrast is glaring.
None of us should be crowing about this pandemic in a political sense, is my honest opinion.
As we listen to the First Minister, saltire-clad campaigners emerge to welcome the Prime Minister as he touches down in the Kinloss Army Barracks.
To welcome the Prime Minister, this is fantastic. Boris is mad as a bag of badgers. I love badgers. Badgers are very nice. If the union is strong, the SNP wouldn't even exist. That's correct. The union is not strong. This is, once again, I've talked about this before. If the union was strong, Boris Johnson would be saying, let's have a referendum tomorrow. Let's have it today. Let's set the wheels in motion and let's have this referendum, get it over and done with. So that we put this idea of independence to bed for another 6, 7, 10 years, whatever. But they're not doing that. They're saying, no, we don't want a referendum. But if you think you're going to win, why would you be against a referendum? This doesn't make any sense. Unless you fear that you would lose.
Are you persuaded at all by the argument that the UK government, in its response to the pandemic, has shown the value, the merits of the United Kingdom?
I wonder what their response, what they truly feel is.
65,000 deaths. Everything we can say to Smith is just lies. He's just a buffoon, no? He's got no respect for Scotland or its people.
These folks don't.
I think, on a serious note, there is a lack of, and I've talked about this before in Parliament, look at the way Jacob Rees-Mogg, Matt Hancock, Boris Johnson himself, how they respond to members of the SNP when they ask a question. They either make jokes about the SNP, they mispronounce the SNP, they name them wrongly. They make comments about Scotland. They ignore the question, first of all. Now, this is an affront to not just the MP, because, at the end of the day, we can agree or disagree with the MP. We can care or we can have absolutely no care in the world for the MP. But the MP represents a group of people. Whether you like the MP or not, that MP represents a constituency. A group of people voted for that MP. Don't they deserve respect? Even if you disagree with the politician. I've talked about this before. I don't know if it was in a video I uploaded today or it's one that's coming tomorrow. But the idea that, okay, the politician, you vote for a politician, this politician represents you, and if the minister or the prime minister disrespects that that question from that MP, from that politician, they're disrespecting you by default. by extension, I should say. So every time the Jacob Rees-Moggs of this world, or the Boris Johnsons or the Matt Hancocks, disrespect an MP from the SNP or any other part of the UK, and it doesn't even have to be from Scotland. If another Conservative MP asked Matt Hancock a question and he ignored the question and started talking some other crap, he's disrespecting the people who voted for that MP. It's an old Churchillian ploy, Max, mispronouncing the name. It's disgusting, you know. Whether you agree or disagree with the questioner, I strongly believe in the idea of attacking the question and not the questioner. You know, on this channel sometimes I make a bit of fun about Mark Francois or whatever, but at the core, my disagreement with Mark Francois is about Brexit, is not about Mark Francois himself. The same goes for other Brexiteers. I ask Brexiteers, how do you benefit from Brexit? How does it benefit you? I'm not asking, I'm asking the question. I want to know what the core response is, because then I can respond to that core idea. Whether what you look like, if you're tall, short, fat, thin, bald, with long hair, whatever, is irrelevant to me. What I'm interested in is the actual argument, the actual position. I don't care if you're from Scotland, I don't care if you're from South America, I don't care where you're from, I'm interested in your actual position. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked.
Waver on the independence question. But in the Bridge of Allen, in the Stirling constituency, the Tories lost to the SNP in the recent general election that voted more no than yes for independence in 2014. Are there signs of a shift? Well, yes.
Are you willing to give independence consideration now?
I'd give it more consideration.
Really?
Would have thought my better judgment.
And no.
She hasn't actually got to sit down and work out how she's going to pay for this and how she's going to pay for that.
This, how are you going to pay for it, is a typical response on the right. You know, you didn't hear any of these people saying, well, how is Rishi Sunak going to pay for all of this money for coronavirus? He's pumped in trillions, almost trillions of pounds into the economy. How is he going to pay for it? How come there are no questions about that? But as soon as someone on the left wants to ask, maybe I'm misrepresenting the SNP as being on the left, but as soon as somebody wants to do something that the Conservatives don't like, well, how much is it going to cost? This is the same argumentation that takes place in please don't kill me, Corbyn fans. I want to. How are you going to pay for it? Just print money. It's the same argumentation that takes place in the United States, where Bernie Sanders was saying, I want to have Medicare for all. I want to look after people. I don't want people to frigging die because they can't afford freaking insulin. And the response is, how are you going to pay for that? We never think of, let's go and bomb the shit out of this country in the Middle East. Nobody ever asks, how are you going to pay for that? I wish somebody had stood up when Tony Blair was going to go to war in Iraq and asked the question, how are you going to pay for this? Maybe somebody did. But I didn't hear anyone asking that question. So why is it when you want to do something for the people, we have to ask the question, how are you going to pay for it? But when it's not something if it's for businesses, crickets, silence. Anyway. You're getting rants tonight.
I'm detecting that neither of you have particularly changed your mind since the last time you were asked this question in 2014.
I wish they'd ask more, like, what is your problem with with Scottish independence? Because I'd like to know the two. I'd like to actually hear the two sides. I'd like to hear the real reasons for the union and the real reasons for independence. I've heard a lot of people talking about independence. I haven't heard many people explain the benefits of the union, apart from how are you going to pay for it. But I would honestly like to hear what the benefits of the union are. Because first of all, I just hear, well, we don't want to listen to the SNP anymore. We don't want to listen to Scottish people. And many of the critiques I hear about, on this channel about the SNP is, they're nasty, and and then they call Nicola Sturgeon cranky or something like that. I say, okay, but that's not a critique of policy. What is wrong with the policy? Explain to me the problem with the policy. I don't care whether you think Nicola Sturgeon is ugly or beautiful or whatever, or she's loudmouth or friendly or whatever. That's irrelevant. I want to know what the problem with the policy is. And if it's always been this way, or, well, they had a vote back in 2014, but that's not a response. You have to convince people you need to stay in the union for X, Y, and Z. And not even Boris Johnson is presenting a response to that. It's, well, coronavirus. That's his response. Why should the Scottish people stay as part of the United Kingdom? Coronavirus. Yes, but Nicola Sturgeon has a better approval rating dealing with the coronavirus than you do. Coronavirus. This is basically the response. We're strong as a union. Yeah, but if you're worried about having a referendum, then you're not. None of this makes any sense.
Boris Johnson and his advisers will be only too aware that polling, for all its limitations, is showing support for independence, for yes over no, gradually ticking up over the last year and a half from the high 40s through the 50% mark, and now this year near continued majority support for independence. In terms of the polling on independence, have we ever seen anything like this before?
Well, we've never previously had a consistent series of polls, on average, putting yes ahead. We are in uncharted waters, and therefore perhaps it's not surprising that the Prime Minister decided that maybe it's time to begin to try to raise the flag for the Union north of the border, because that flag does seem to have got a little bit tattered and battered in the course of the last year or so.
Why? Professor Curtis points first to Brexit, which Scotland voted 62% against, and now to seemingly better perceptions of Nicola Sturgeon's handling of the pandemic, even though...
So once again, I talked about this before. Scotland was thrown under a bus because of Brexit. I don't think we would be in this situation, or the independence would still be a very powerful force in Scotland. But I think Brexit drove the message home. Look at the disaster of Brexit. Scotland voted to remain in the European Union. It's been torn away from the European Union. It didn't want to leave the European Union. It's been torn away from the European Union by Westminster. And Scotland saying, we don't want to go. And the response from Westminster is, tough. I can't believe the disinformation being promoted in the chat regarding referendums in Scotland has to be educators and infiltrators. If we have no deal Brexit and Scotland left the Union, would Scotland have a hard border with England? Ben says, so I'm not an expert on this, but it's probably better asking some of the people who are on the chat. But I'm here, so I'll throw in my 2 cents, which is probably not a good idea. There would be a hard border if Scotland became part of the European Union. So there would be the UK would be out of the European Union. It would be, an external country, like any other country that's outside the European Union that borders the European Union. So there would be a border. There would be border checks on the border, because it's the border of the European Union. Now, if Scotland was not part of the European Union, well, then they could work out an agreement with England, or what would be called after that, Great Britain, the United Kingdom of England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Well, with Westminster, they'd probably work out an agreement with Westminster to have some type of border, probably not a hard border with security checkpoints and stuff, but maybe that would be necessary. But it would depend on, Killer's right, the EU requires a border between members and non-members. So it would be a requirement of the European Union. It would also be probably a requirement of WTO, because WTO, no, let me correct myself. WTO doesn't require a border, but if there's a dispute, it would recommend a border. It would recommend that they check goods travel passing from one side of the border to the other, one side of the country, one country to the other country. Anyway, let's go on.
Deaths overall, if not lately, are at worrying levels in Scotland as in England.
We pulled some serious G's. I pulled up to 9G.
Had they pulled some serious G's? The Prime...
Did you pull some serious G's? Yeah, I pulled some serious G's. Look, let me step out of my Maximilian Robespierre seat for a moment. This is Boris as the lovable rogue. I know, I'm no fan of Boris Johnson, as you know. If you've been watching this channel for more than a few months, you know I'm no fan of Boris Johnson. But this is Boris as the lovable rogue, making jokes, acting like a bit of a buffoon. This is red meat. This is candy to his support base. Look at Boris, acting a bit of a fool with the Air Force. You're pulling some serious G's, It's all a bit of a joke. Boris Johnson should not be Prime Minister. Boris Johnson should be, I don't know, how can I say, a designated village idiot or something. A government, he has his own government department, the Department of Village Idiots, where he just goes and does the idiot for, I don't know, for what? For morale or something.
The Minister asked from within RAF Lossiemouth's protective ring. It seems he has concluded the case for the Union in Scotland requires similar thrust.
So how...
Boris should be pushing a broom. Yes. Boris is a bluffer, a joke, a clown. He's not PM material. He's not. You compare him to Margaret Thatcher even. Margaret Thatcher's enemies respected her. They didn't like her, but they respected her. Who respects Boris Johnson? Even his supporters, they don't respect him. They see him as a bit of a clown. A clown in a circus, yes. And the cabinet is the circus. To be fair, the economic arguments are nuanced, with a little argument over the figures. However, the relationship is consistently skewed, and Scotland's contribution underestimated, sleight of hand. Yeah, I think this is there's so much information that's moving around that it's very difficult to understand which is true and which is not. And of course, if Westminster is promoting the idea of, Scotland can't survive on its own, of course it's going to present data to support that. Who disrespects Trump? Who respects Trump would be probably a better question. Diddlymus. Unfortunately, Boris Johnson is not a fool, as he knows exactly what he's doing, and history will prove that. No, I agree, Belfast. I've said this before. Boris, pretends to be the fool. He ruffles his hair before the camera is switched on. There have been some incidents where you see Boris Johnson in his true style, and it is quite frightening. He is calculating. He's not the funny guy that people imagine him to be. Too wee, too stupid, too skint, they say. I remember they said about the same about Ireland, and look at Ireland today. I never knew anyone who respected Thatcher. Irish Republicans striking minors, no one. The deplorables respect Trump, yes. And the poorly educated. Or was it was it poorly educated, Trump said?
How will Brexit play into all of this, and how are those vital talks between Britain and the EU going? The latest round ended in deadlock this afternoon, and time is running out to find a deal that will avoid tariffs and quotas being imposed on cross-channel trade at the end of the year. Our political editor Gary Gibbon joins us from Westminster. Gary.
Well, as Kieran was saying there, different perceptions in Scotland and England of who's handling COVID best. They seem to be driving the latest burst in support for independence, but it is layered, as Kieran said, on top of the Brexit fault line. You talk to strategists in the unionist camp and in the nationalist camp, and they're quite clear. The cohort of voters that are making the journey over to the independent side are pretty exclusively pro-Remain. So how these talks go, it could be quite critical to their journey. And
I think this is an interesting aspect of this. So, as he's explained, a lot of people who moved, who were against independence, now when Brexit arrived, they voted to Remain, and now they've shifted from Remain, because Remain no longer exists, to the pro-independence side. It's going to be important how Boris Johnson deals with the European Union if he's able to get a deal. Now, I have talked about this before, and unfortunately I have this inkling, it's like an itch at the back of my head that is convincing me all the time that Boris Johnson is going to get some type of deal, some bare bones deal, that he's going to come back to Westminster, hold it up, or something like this, and say, we have this deal. And the Brexiteers will be delighted, everyone will be cheering, and this will be used as in a way to say, look, Brexit has succeeded. Brexit has not been a disaster. We have a good deal. This would be good for Britain, for the United Kingdom going ahead, and this will be used as a weapon against Scottish independence. Now, of course, I could be completely wrong here, and Boris doesn't get a deal, and this will just encourage the march towards independence. If I was a unionist, I'd be extremely worried at the moment, because the person you have to save you is Boris Johnson, and Boris Johnson doesn't give a flying crap about anyone else but Boris Johnson. Polls show 78% plus support for EU Remain in Scotland. Ask this question again in February, it'll be 90%. Tories claim to value the union, but generally disrespect those areas outside the southeast. Economic powerhouse does not create wealth so much to accrue it. Yes. Boris won't get a deal with the USA until 2021, so he will have to try and play nice to Scotland. The Tories hate the union. I'm not sure if the Tories truly hate the union. It's just they don't like the people who aren't Tories, or even worse, they don't like people who are not English. And I don't mean this in an offensive way to English people. I'm being specifically focused on the Tories themselves.
If we were to come out of the transition and crash out with no deal, well, then that would cause even more disruption, potentially tariffs. It would throw the light onto Brexit, which wouldn't help the cause at all, probably, of unionism.
It's like this idea of, Brexit is best when it's not talked about. The less you talk about Brexit, the better. It's almost like, Joe Biden's election campaign. The less you talk about Joe Biden, the better it is for him. And it seems to be the same with Brexit. the less you focus on Brexit, the more people are willing to ignore Brexit and not be disturbed by Brexit. But Brexit is going to be a disaster. It's going to be a disaster not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. And you can't get away from it. Boris Johnson is attempting to hide Brexit, but you can't escape it. It's like the coronavirus.
And it would make the UK government look a bit ragged, playing into the perception that some people in Scotland are building up over the COVID saga anyway. How are those talks going? Well, as you say, they crashed through a deadline today. This was meant to be a moment when they were coming together to come up with a deal, and you get a flavour of what the two sides think of that in these...
I just want to... This is completely unrelated to what they're talking about. But just look at the quality of journalism here. This Gary Gibbon, I respect Gary Gibbon a huge amount, because he's someone who speaks... He doesn't take sides. He's not spinning something. He's not trying to ask difficult questions just to be, difficult. It's like he really cares about journalism, and he's presenting the facts. He's presenting both sides, and this is quality journalism by Channel 4. I highly recommend Channel 4. Sorry.
Comments from the two chief negotiators.
A less ambitious agreement on goods and services will not lead the EU to drop its demands for a robust level playing field. On fisheries, the UK is effectively asking for a near total exclusion of EU fishing vessels from UK's waters. That is simply unacceptable.
It's clear that until the EU has internalised and accepted that we will be an independent state with the right to determine our own laws, control our own fishing grounds, then it will...
You are an independent country. You have always been an independent country. This is just language for Brexiteers. Why are you, David Frost? I thought you were above this. You're just feeding the Brexiteers at the trough. Independence, independent country, taking back control. Do you actually believe this rhetoric? Or are you just saying it to stroke the Brexiteers?
It will be difficult to reach an agreement.
Well, you would think, listening to the two of them, that they're poles apart, nothing can be done. But, as I say, the number 10 forces are very conscious of the way this would play into the Scottish debate, and for that reason there's even more pressure to come to a deal. And a late deal does give the advantage, they think, to them, in that it gives less time for the EU to push back and try to extract more concessions, and maybe it gives less time to the people behind them, their own back, the Brexiteers, to voice their discontent with whatever concessions.
What a mess. So you have the British government playing chicken with the European Union, but they're playing chicken with... They're on a bicycle, and they're playing chicken with a truck, and the people behind, and they're trying to convince, and behind them they have the Brexiteers, but on the back of the bicycle they have a cutout picture of a truck. So the Brexiteers think they're two trucks playing chicken, while in reality it's a bicycle against a truck that's playing chicken. Look, the European Union, and I've said this continually, will defend European integration first of all. Why does anyone think that the European Union were willing to spend days and nights working out a deal for compensation for European states, and made a lot of concessions for different countries in the European Union to deal with the coronavirus? So this 1.2 trillion euro investment fund, that was about defending the Union, the European Union. Yes, it was to help these countries, but it was to defend it's about defending European integration. Now, Brexiteers seem to think that the European Union will just, at the last minute, throw itself under a bus. For what? For fish? For an industry that's as big as the lawnmower industry in the UK? Do they really believe that? I understand the people who comment on this channel probably believe it, the Brexiteers who comment on this channel. But does Boris Johnson really believe that? Does David Frost truly believe that? Does Jacob Rees-Mogg truly believe that? Yes, we've seen the EU work up to the 11th hour, but that was nothing to do with European integration. That was having a deal within the European Union. This is completely different.
They've made. So despite the rhetoric there, and partly because of Scotland, don't rule out a late deal.
Gary Gibbon in Westminster. Well, joining me here now, the Deputy Leader of the SNP, Keith Brown, and the Scottish Conservative MP for Moray, Douglas Ross, whose constituency the Prime Minister Boris Johnson visited today, joins us over the internet.
This should be good.
Douglas Ross, smacks of desperation this, doesn't it, a little? I mean, I'm surprised that you wanted Boris Johnson in your constituency, given how unpopular he is in Scotland. You, after all, resigned over the behaviour of Dominic Cummings from the government.
Well, I think it was very good to see the Prime Minister back in Moray for the second time in just 8 months. And that is in stark contrast to the First Minister of Scotland, who hasn't been here in her official capacity for almost 2 years. And it just shows how seriously the Prime Minister takes representing and getting out.
So, Boris, why do you think Boris Johnson is there? Boris Johnson is there to promote the union. He's in friendly areas to promote the union. Why would Nicola Sturgeon go to an area that's unfriendly to her? She should go to area. Well, you know, what would she go? What would she go to Moray for? Like for propaganda purposes? Well, I'm sure your supporters would have something to say about it. Why is Boris Johnson going to your area? Is it because he's seeing friendly faces? You know, he's not going to be challenged. Like, why are you talking this stupid bullshit? Like, I know that you're talking bullshit. You know you're talking bullshit. But why do you say this? We both know it's bullshit that you're talking. So why do you do it?
To every part of the United Kingdom. And just 2 points from the earlier introduction. The Prime Minister wasn't just at RAF Lossiemouth, where he was thanking the troops, and also at Kinloss Barracks, but he was on a factory visit with me at Baxter's, where he was cheered and waved by employees and spoke to local...
He was cheered by supporters, by Conservative Party supporters. Like, if Jeremy Corbyn went to his constituency, would he be cheered by his constituents? Yes. If he went to a Labour stronghold in another part of the country, would he be cheered? Probably. How is that relevant?
People and engaged with them. And also, these visits had been planned for some time, but because of COVID, they couldn't happen. So this is not a knee-jerk reaction to opinion polls. This is the Prime Minister getting out and about in the United Kingdom and showing people in Scotland that we have two governments that can work together, working for them.
Then why didn't he go directly and meet with Nicola Sturgeon? Why did he go to you first?
Well, why do you think support for independence is so high?
Well, Nicola Sturgeon herself has said support for independence has risen when the topic of independence and separating Scotland from the rest of the United Kingdom has not been at the top of the agenda. And I think...
That's some amazing mental gymnastics. So why are the polls high? Well, the polls are high for independence because, well, if we talk about other things, then the polls will be high for independence. What? Is this just mental gymnastics or mental garbage?
The more people consider the huge benefits of remaining part of a strong United Kingdom, £13 billion of investment by the UK government directly into Scotland during this pandemic, and when they look at the fragile case for separation that the SNP continue to put forward, that may refocus minds and we could see a shift again. But there's
So we haven't been able to present a real reason for staying in the union, but if we could come up with a reason, then people would stop supporting independence. That's your argument? That's the ability? It's like, well, if I could convince everyone on this stream to send me €100, I'm not asking honestly, but if I could convince everyone on this stream to send me €100, I'd be really rich. So, if we could convince people to support the union, then people would support the union. We call this a circular argument. It's like, if you believe Boris Johnson is amazing, then you will believe Boris Johnson is amazing. I'm sorry, but if this is the best the union can provide, then it deserves, I'm sorry, to be dissolved.
There's no doubt the importance of the Union, the United Kingdom, is at the top of everyone's minds within the UK government, and I think we are going to see more and more of these visits by the Prime Minister, by senior members and others in the Cabinet.
Really, you cannot say that with a straight face. You cannot say that we want to see more of Boris Johnson in Scotland. Because, yes, the people in Murray, I don't know Murray, I imagine it's a wonderful place, but I imagine the people in Murray will continue to support Boris Johnson. They will always support Boris or the Conservative Party. So sending more Conservatives to Murray will not make any difference. You need to send Boris Johnson to places where he can convert people. Now, maybe that's not possible. But he should try at least, you know? Like it's pointless me trying to convince Remainers that the UK should remain in the European Union, because they already agree with me. My job is to convince Brexiteers that Brexit was a bad idea, that it's better for the UK to remain in the European Union. Although that ship has sailed, of course. But you know what I'm talking about. Boris Johnson should be going into the centre of Glasgow. He should be going to the Isle of Skye. He should be going to the Highlands. He should be going everywhere. Everywhere that the SNP are strong, that's where Boris Johnson should be going. Convincing people, sitting down with community leaders, sitting down with citizens, going to the pubs, speaking with people, listening to them. But instead he's going to places where people agree with him. Once again, you're not going to win over people who already... You're not going to increase your vote by talking to people who agree with you.
To reiterate our message about how strong we are together as four nations in the United Kingdom.
But, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt him again, but... Thank you very much, Glasgow Kiss. But if you haven't convinced people at this stage, why have you not convinced them? If the polls show that more people support independence than staying in the union, that means that you have failed in your messaging, perhaps. Or maybe the problem is your messaging. So how can you say, well, if we get Boris up here, he'll be able to change the situation? Great. So let's send Boris where? To places where people agree with him. Send him to space. Look, I'm not trying to be, over the top here. But I really don't understand the idea of sending Boris to constituencies where people already support the Conservatives. Tories would struggle for 20% in Scotland. Murray is 38%, Skye 90% SNP. That's where Boris Johnson should be going. He should be going right to Skye. Imagine if Boris Johnson could convince the people of... If he could convince the people of Skye that the union is worth being part of, then he could fly into Glasgow. It would be a cakewalk in Glasgow, in Edinburgh, in other parts of Scotland, to convince people that, yes, you should be part of the union. It's, on a serious note, but I am, in a sense, being serious here. On a serious note, Bernie Sanders wanted to promote socialism, democratic socialism, he said. It's more a social democracy. Anyway, but he wanted to promote more left-wing thinking. Where did he go? Did he go on secular talk? He did. But where was the more interesting place he went? He went on Fox News. You said, well, why would he go on Fox News? He went on Fox News because he needed to convince the people who would never listen to him to listen to him. He believed if he could convert some of the people on Fox News to his way of thinking, then he has broken down a wall. That's why Boris Johnson should be going to the Isle of Skye. But Boris Johnson is not Bernie Sanders.
Keith Brown, are you benefiting from the fact, as Douglas Ross suggests, that nobody's concentrating on the downsides of independence? Because you're not talking about it.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because in the 2014 referendum we started off around the low 20s support for independence, and by the time you got to the referendum we're at 45%, so I think we'll see further increases. But of course people are aware of the fact how good a job Nicola Sturgeon's been doing, and they contrast that with Boris Johnson. As you said, Douglas Ross had to resign because he said his constituents were being told one thing and the government was doing something else.
But this politician, now I'm being critical here, okay? I'm trying to be as honest as I can. This politician is very clever. He's not talking about independence. He's making a comparison between Nicola Sturgeon and Boris Johnson because he knows that the people watching this understand the difference between Nicola Sturgeon and Boris Johnson. He's not talking about independence at the moment. He's talking about Boris Johnson and Nicola Sturgeon. So he's framing the question, he's framing the situation as, look, whatever your idea about at the moment about independence is irrelevant for the moment. Look at who you have in charge. You have Boris Johnson, the buffoon, and you have the professional Nicola Sturgeon. Who would you prefer? Irrelevant for a moment, the idea of independence. And this is very clever. He's a skilled politician.
Does Sturgeon make all the same mistakes early on? She failed to heed the lessons from the Far East. She failed to lock down as well until March. I mean, it was only...
Well, I think, there's a little bit been a little bit dishonest here because Scotland is overruled, in a sense, by Westminster. Her hands are tied on certain things that she can do. Now, maybe my response is not completely correct here.
Only after we were well into this pandemic that she started doing things differently.
That's funny, that's a kind of Tory narrative which says on the one hand, the Tories have been saying you're only doing a few things slightly different, and now they're saying the things that you've done are really down to the Tory government. You can't have it both ways. I think she's been clear, consistent and very transparent. And we contrast it with Boris Johnson, taking endless questions every single day from journalists across the country on what she's been doing, being very clear and transparent. And today, instead, you've got Boris Johnson coming here talking about the mighty union when he should be focusing on the pandemic. That's what's...
And this, once again, is, very clever framing. We should be focusing on the pandemic. This is the problem at the moment. We shouldn't be focusing on independence. Independence is something that will come later. We should be focusing on the pandemic. And Nicola Sturgeon has proved herself a worthy leader on this topic.
Foremost in people's minds. And the reason he's here, of course, is because he's worried sick about what he knows is coming, which is a referendum on independence for Scotland.
Douglas Ross?
Well, I doubt that is coming, given that Nicola Sturgeon herself, as Deputy First Minister, said that referendum was a once-in-a-generation vote, and people in Scotland...
This is a once-in-a-generation vote. As far as I know, that was Alex Salmon who said that. Or may have said that. I don't know if it was actually her that said it, but it's irrelevant because the situation has changed. Something particular happened in 2016. I wonder if anyone can remember what happened in the UK. Something particularly happened in 2016 that changed the dynamic of the UK. Can anyone tell me what happened in 2016? maybe if I throw in the word Nigel Farage, perhaps we can understand Brexit. Okay, in case anyone didn't know. Brexit happened. So Brexit completely changed the dynamic. But also this idea that it was... there is a rhetoric, okay? I'm being extremely critical now of the S&P. If the S&P had said, and I don't know if they actually said this because there is some people saying they did, some people saying they didn't. But if, let's say, for example, the S&P said, yes, it's once in a generation opportunity. Now, did they mean this, or is this rhetoric? Because rhetoric could be in the sense that we need to do it now, otherwise we're never going to have it, to motivate people. Was it to motivate people to go out and vote? If it was just to motivate, then it wasn't a once in a generation. It was a statement based on a lack of information, because there was another possibility. You know, if I say, I'm only going to buy one more car for the rest of my life, and then after I discover, well, that car probably wasn't a good one, maybe I should buy another one. Was I lying before? Or was the decision I made or the comment I made based on a lack of information? Now, we can argue all day about whether that's true or not, which it is. But my point is, that is irrelevant because the situation changed. Brexit came along. The people of Scotland were convinced to vote to stay in the Union because they were told that if you vote to stay in the Union, we will remain as part of the European Union. If you become independent, you'll be out of the European Union. And people were lied to, because 2 years later, we had Brexit. And the same people who were telling the Scottish people, you need to stay in the Union, pulled Scotland out of the European Union. So don't they at least deserve that? Now, I haven't even got to the point of, well, you know, there are people who were born at, you know, who were born or young at the time of the referendum in 2014, 6 years ago. You know, there were people who were not old enough to vote at the time. Their future has been decided for them, while at the same time, there are older people who are no longer with us, who had voted in it, and their future doesn't exist anymore. But I think most of the people on the stream understand this.
Don't like being taken for granted. People here in Murray voted comprehensively to remain part of the United Kingdom.
Then what have you to fear? What? I was about to say something worse. What do you have to friggin' fear? If you say, look, the people here in Murray want to remain in the Union. But then what's the problem with having another referendum? They would vote to stay in the Union. And what's the problem with that? Your problem is that other people would vote not to stay in the Union. That's your problem. Your problem is not to have a, you know, this whole argument from the Tories is there's no need to have a referendum because people voted 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago, to stay in the Union. But we don't need another referendum. We don't want another referendum because we'd win it anyway. So it's like, I don't want to fight Mike Tyson because I'd beat him anyway.
And they expect both governments to follow the will of the people just 6 years ago. 6 years is not a generation.
Well, of course, the Tories and their Labour partners said that the only way to guarantee Scotland's place in the EU was to vote no in the referendum. And look, we're now being taken out of the EU. The ready meal, the oven-ready deal that Boris Johnson was going to produce is burnt to a crisp in the oven, and we're looking at businesses...
It didn't burn to a crisp. It was in a microwave oven. It dried out.
and individuals paying billions of pounds for the cost of Brexit. So the Tories have not stuck to the word that they said, which is the only way to guarantee Scotland's place in the EU, supported by nearly 2/3 of the people in Scotland, was going to be guaranteed by a no vote. That's not happened, and people have got the right to cast a vote again.
So, I mean,
look, for me, the simple response to Boris Johnson, to the Tories, to the Unionists is, do you believe the Union is strong? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then you should be the first person to promote a referendum, because you know that the people would support the Union. The SNP would be defeated. The SNP would probably disappear. Nicola Sturgeon would be replaced the next day. And you'd never hear about the SNP or independence for another number, maybe 10 or 15 years. So this would be my response to the Tories and the Unionists. Do you believe the Union is strong? Yes. Then have a referendum. And you'll win it, because you believe it's strong. Because if you say, well, no, we don't believe the Union is strong. Why do you think the Union is not strong? Should we have a referendum to test that? No. Why? Because we'll lose. It's like, I don't want to fight Mike Tyson because I know I'm going to lose. But I believe that I can beat Mike Tyson, then I shouldn't be afraid to go into the ring with him. I don't know if I'm making sense here. I'm trying my best. This stream has been over 2 hours, okay? But if you believe you can win something, then you should be fully on board to do it, to fight it, to play it, to have that referendum. If you think you're going to lose, then you are dead against it. I think if I went into a boxing ring with Mike Tyson, I would be destroyed. I would be literally killed. So I don't want to go into a fight with Mike Tyson. Don't fight Mike Tyson. But if I trained, if I did Kung Fu, if I did, I don't know, whatever, and I could use any of these, if I had a gun, then it would be more likely I would win. And if it was necessary to have a fight, then I would say, yes, I'll go in and kick the crap out of Mike Tyson. This is this is the problem. This part of the problem is not talked about. This is for people who are pro-independence. When you meet unionists, you need to ask them, why are you against a referendum? Because we had a referendum before, and okay, then do you think you would win? If you say no, then there's a problem. Gun? No, I promise I won't bring a gun. But how long can they say no to Scotland, Max? I'm starting a Kickstarter to fund to stop Max fighting Mike Tyson. Sweep the leg. 24 referendum. We want Scotland to be an equal partner and lead the union, not leave. What happened to that? And the Smith Commission. You wonder if I might go instead to Floyd Moneyweather. He's weaker. It comes back to the uppercuts. Okay, I want to. We're getting close to the end. I'm going to stop here, but I do recommend watching the rest of the video if you want. But we're back in the same place once again. The Tories are worried about the union. They understand that the union is weak. There is a risk that the SNP and Indian independence movement would win. So instead of actually going there and defending the union, they would prefer to avoid the fight because they believe they would lose. Or they are worried about losing. If they were fully confident that they would win, then they would be promoting a second referendum. But they're not. In the same way that, when the Conservative Party believe they're going to win a general election, do they wait for 4 years? Do they wait until the end of the fixed term parliament? or do they change the law so that they can have their election immediately? Theresa May had, okay, I have an opportunity to win. Let's have our election now or as soon as possible, because they believe they can win. Anyway, let me change topic for a moment. I'll just remove this for a moment. So back across the water for a moment, I just want to show you this amazing video with browser source with AOC. This is so what happened was AOC was accosted and insulted as she was.
Respect makes a decent man, and when a decent man.
Whoops, I'll just bring it back to the beginning. So she was leaving Congress, and a man, another politician, a Republican politician, insulted her, called her a fucking bitch to her face, or behind her back, actually. He wasn't brave enough to say... Can you see this, guys? Apologies if you cannot. Can you see this on the screen? Please tell me you can see it on the screen. British and England and rename it Derry London. Yes, AOC for president, great. Okay, so let's hear what she had to say. What's the point in me explaining? She will explain it much better.
Because I have to show my parents that I am their daughter and that they did not raise me to accept abuse from men.
So it says here, AOC went off after a male representative called her a fucking bitch.
About 2 days ago, I was walking up the steps of the Capitol when Representative Yoho suddenly turned a corner, and he was accompanied by Representative Roger Williams, and accosted me on the steps right here in front of our nation's Capitol. I was minding my own business, walking up the steps, and Representative Yoho put his finger in my face. He called me disgusting. He called me crazy. He called me out of my mind. And he called me dangerous. And then he took a few more steps, and after I had recognized his comments as rude, he walked away and said, "I'm rude. You're calling me rude." I took a few steps ahead, and I walked inside and cast my vote. I walked back out, and there were reporters in the front of the Capitol, and in front of reporters, Representative Yoho called me, and I quote, "a fucking bitch." These are the words that Representative Yoho levied against a congresswoman, the congresswoman that not only represents New York's 14th congressional district, but every congresswoman and every woman in this country, because all of us have had to deal with this in some form, some way, some shape, at some point in our lives. And I want to be clear that Representative Yoho's comments were not deeply hurtful or piercing to me.
Sorry, I will show his response in a moment, so as requested.
Because I have worked a working class job. I have waited tables in restaurants. I have ridden the subway. I have walked the streets in New York City. And this
is very clever, because I don't mean this in a negative way. She's framing, I have gone through, I haven't come from a privileged lifestyle where, daddy would look out for me and make sure I went to the right school and protect me from society. She waited tables, she went on the subway, she has, experienced this type of abuse before.
This kind of language is not new. I have encountered words uttered by Mr. Yoho and men uttering the same words as Mr. Yoho while I was being harassed in restaurants. I have tossed men out of bars that have used language like Mr. Yoho's. And I have encountered this type of harassment riding the subway in New York City. This is not new, and that is the problem. Mr. Yoho was not alone. He was walking shoulder to shoulder with Representative Roger Williams. And that's when we start to see that this issue is not about one incident. It is cultural. It is a culture of lack of impunity, of accepting of violence and violent language against women, and an entire structure of power that supports that. Because not only have I been spoken to disrespectfully, particularly by members of the Republican Party and elected officials in the Republican Party, not just here, but the President of the United States last year told me to go home to another country, with the implication that I don't even belong in America. The governor of Florida, Governor DeSantis, before I even was sworn in, called me a whatever that is. Dehumanizing language is not new. And what we are seeing is that incidents like these are happening in a pattern. This is a pattern of an attitude towards women and dehumanization of others. So while I was not deeply hurt or offended by little comments that are made, when I was reflecting on this, I honestly thought that I was just going to pack it up and go home. It's just another day, right? But then yesterday, Representative Yoho decided to come to the floor of the House of Representatives and make excuses for his behavior. And that I could not let go. I could not allow my nieces, I could not allow the little girls that I go home to, I could not allow victims of verbal abuse and worse to see that.
Wait a minute, she's going to really, really hit it where it hurts.
To see that excuse and to see our Congress accept it as legitimate and accept it as an apology and to accept silence as a form of acceptance. I could not allow that to stand, which is why I am rising today to raise this point of personal privilege. And I do not need Representative Yoho to apologize to me. Clearly, he does not want to. Clearly, when given the opportunity, he will not. And I will not stay up late at night waiting for an apology from a man who has no remorse over calling women and using abusive language towards women. But what I do have issue with is using women, our wives and daughters, as shields and excuses for poor behavior. Mr. Yoho mentioned that he has a wife and 2 daughters. I am 2 years younger than Mr. Yoho's youngest daughter. I am someone's daughter too. My father, thankfully, is not alive to see how Mr. Yoho treated his daughter. My mother got to see Mr. Yoho's disrespect on the floor of this house towards me on television. And I am here because I have to show my parents that I am their daughter and that they did not raise me to accept abuse from men. Now, what I am here to say is that this harm that Mr. Yoho tried to levy against me was not just an incident directed at me. But when you do that to any woman, what Mr. Yoho did was give permission to other men to do that to his daughters. In using that language in front of the press, he gave permission to use that language against his wife, his daughters, women in his community. And I am here to stand up to say that is not acceptable.
I'll allow you to watch the rest of it. I just want to show his response, but I just want to respond to what she has said here. And I think this was extremely powerful, this idea of he has a wife and he has 2 daughters, and what he has done is produces an environment that it's okay for his wife and his daughters to be insulted in the same way. Like, you know, I make jokes about Boris Johnson. I call him a buffoon, and this is different to to the way politicians, like, in a way, the way she was treated was malicious. It was not in the same way I regard Boris Johnson. And also there's a power dynamic that's completely different. I'm a 2-bit YouTuber, okay? I have no power, or almost no power, very, very little power. I should have more power. I used to have a lot of power many centuries ago. Boris Johnson, so I'm punching up. She's punching across. If that politician had said it to a member of the public, it would be insane. He's saying it to another member of Congress. If he has a problem with her, he should point out where the problem of her policies. What policies shall he said you're disgusting? Okay, what is disgusting about her policies? What is she doing that's disgusting? Like, it's pointless insulting the politician to their face. You need to attack their policies. Now, I'm going to show you his response instead. Give Max more. Don't give Max power, for God's sake. Heads will roll again. I understand, like, I'm trying to be even-handed here, so I understand that people will be cynical about her. But I honestly do believe that she is responding to this because she believes this is the right way to respond. You know, why does she receive so much abuse from the Republican Party? And it's not abuse because of her policies. They make fun of her as, for the way she speaks, the way she looks, they insult her background. You know, they don't insult her policies. Why don't you insult her policy? Why don't you attack her policies? If her policies are a problem, then they should be easy to destroy. But instead you're attacking her as a person, which doesn't make any sense unless you don't actually have a way to attack her.
Mr. Speaker, I stand before...
So this is Representative Yoho, apologies. So here is his apology.
Before you this morning to address the strife I injected into the already contentious Congress. I have worked with many members in this chamber over the past 4 terms, members on both sides of the aisle, and each of you know that I'm a man of my word. So let me take a moment to address this body. I rise to apologize for the abrupt manner of the conversation I had with my colleague from New York. It is true that we disagree on policies and visions for America, but that does not mean we should be disrespectful. Having been married for 45 years with 2 daughters, I'm very cognizant of my language. The offensive name-calling words attributed to me by the press were never spoken to my colleagues, and if they were construed that way, I apologize for their misunderstanding.
This is a typical fake apology. I apologize if I offended someone. Not I'm apologizing for what I did. If you think I did something wrong, then I'm apologizing for that. That's not an apology. If you said, Max, you stole my car, I say, well, I apologize if you think I stole your car. Is that an apology? What's the problem with just saying, look, It was in the heat of the moment. I meant no offense by it. It was the wrong thing to say, and I'm sorry for doing that. Well, you know, an apology worthy of pretty awful. Sorry.
As my colleagues know, I'm passionate about those affected by poverty. My wife Carolyn and I started out together at the age of 19 with nothing. We did odd jobs.
So how is that relevant to poverty? Yeah, I care about, you know, poor people because I used to be poor. What do you do for poor people now?
And we were on food stamps. I know the face of poverty, and for a time it was mine. That is why I know people in this country can still, with all its faults, rise up and succeed and not be encouraged to break the law.
So he started from an apology to the American dream. You know, you can be poor and become a wealthy a lobbyist if you really work hard. You know, I started off on food stamps, but you can guarantee once I leave this chamber, I'm going to be rolling in cash, literally rolling in cash.
I will commit to each of you that I will conduct myself from a place of passion and understanding, that policy and political disagreement be vigorously debated with the knowledge that we approach the problems facing our nation with the...
Did he actually read this before actually reading it? Did he get one of his daughters to type it up before he he actually presented it? Like, if this was an apology, I have done apologies on this channel. I have made mistakes. I've said things that were wrong. I didn't prepare a text and say, okay, I'm going to say this, 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 and this. I speak from the heart. I'm sorry I said this that was wrong. Accept my apologies, and I'll try to avoid it in the future.
The betterment of the country in mind and the people we serve. I cannot apologize for my passion.
Nobody's asking you to apologize for your passion. They're asking you to apologize for the words that you said.
Or for loving my God.
Man, you're not going to get me to stop loving God. I'm sorry. This is like... You know, it was written in the Bible then. Jesus, he's the Son of God. He said, when a woman acts out of line, you call her a fucking bitch. And I won't be told by any heathen not to respect the word of God. God, Jesus. He's injected the American dream into this. He's injected poverty into this. He's injected God into this. What's next?
My family and my country, I yield back.
Jesus Christ, can you not just say, look, I'm sorry for what I said. It was in the heat of the moment. I was upset. I apologize to the representative. It was the wrong thing to say. I mean no offense, and I'd like to make amends for it. And people would actually look at you and say, well, this is a decent guy. This is someone, you know, I can actually respect. You know, we all say things that we don't mean in the moment. Please stop doing accents. Okay, apologies. Jeremy. Really, 7 out of 10 for fake accent, fake apology scale. 7 out of 10 for fake apology. I would give it even more than that. Apology is weakness. David is right. In politics, apologizing is weak. I actually see it as a strength. I said on numerous occasions, why can't Boris Johnson apologize for what he's done? They would have looked at him and said, and thought, cook. It seems I'm hitting many leftist nerves. He can't do that, Max. To apologize for wrongdoing is strength. He seems totally incapable of that. Do an Irish accent. Do an Irish accent. You want me to do an Irish accent? The worse the better. Okay. I knew comedy was not my field. Okay, guys, I cannot apologize for Max's accents. Okay. Was it really that bad? Okay, I thought I was doing reasonably well. Note to self, no more accents. Okay. Or just fake arse girls we drink. Okay, we're almost at the end of the stream, guys. Thank Christ, probably you guys are saying to yourselves. So on the issue of accents, of course, someone does accents much better than I could ever do. Do an Italian accent. It depends on Italian, because in the south of Italy, the Italian accent is like Super Mario, you know, Mamma Mia. But Indian, no. Good night, all. Stay safe. Your accent was creepily accurate. Not according to some others on the stream. My accent was terrible. I've worked on the moon for years. That accent was perfect. Okay, before we finish, we're doing our mi scusi, la mamma mia, quello è l'accento di Badovere, where I live. Oh, I've given away my address. This is our final one for the road.
Aye, well, it's Nicola here. It's Thursday.
Sorry, it's a little bit loud. So just before we watch our final video for One for the Road. So thanks so much to everyone for coming on the stream tonight. It was a longer live stream than usual. Thanks to everyone for your kind donations and all your comments. And thanks to all of the moderators for keeping everything floating along. Apologies for some of the technical problems at the beginning. You pop an A at the end of your words, Max. That's an Italian influence. I do. Do I put an A at the end of each word? Okay, so let's hear Nicola.
I'm wearing my nice wee fawn suit that I got for the Bond premiere. I am absolutely aware that Boris is in Scotland. We all know because he's running about ruffling his hair, telling everybody that he managed to give money to Scotland, so therefore the union is very strong. And I see the thousands upon thousands of people with their union flags welcoming them. I'm joking. There was people out with their Frank Get the Door t-shirts and saltires. So very welcome to Scotland, Boris. I hope you're treated well up in all the isolated spaces and deep in the woods. Now, we're going to have some questions today. No doubt they're going to be about Boris, but I do want to reiterate that we're all doing great. We're wearing the face masks. We're being kind to each other. The shielding people can come out. For fuck's sake, keep washing your hands and 2 meters distance, because if it doesn't, it'll come back and then we'll all have to suffer the absolute fucking lockdown through the summer, and we don't want that. Right, let's go to a journalist and see how many of them can speak about Boris.
Boris Johnson. Sorry. Lamont, thank you so much for that, for becoming a Patreon. Remember, everyone, you can become a Patreon and enjoy more fun on Discord. Sorry, back to Nicola.
has said that the response, particularly economically, to the pandemic has shown the strength and might of the union. We can probably take it as read that you don't agree with that.
You do know that this is money he has borrowed. The taxpayers will be paying it back. It wasn't a gift. It's money he's borrowed. And if Scotland was independent, we could borrow money as well. So this isn't about economics or party politics. This is a COVID briefing. This isn't us here to talk about Boris, what Boris does and what Boris doesn't do and how the union looks. If the union was that strong, it wouldn't be standing up in the Orkneys avoiding the fridge. This is a COVID briefing, and I want to thank everybody for
avoiding the fridge.
Keeping the COVID numbers low. Every one of you out there who did the 2 metre distancing, washing your hands, wearing a face mask and looking after the shielding people and helping each other's mental health. That's what I'm fucking here for. Not to talk about Big Bojo and all the shite he spouts. Right, it's been a long week for everybody. I'm heading out. I'll see you here next Tuesday. Right, where's my clicky pen? I've had enough of this shite. Feet are killing me. Frank, get the door! Wonder if there's a big enough fridge in the Orkneys. I want cheesy chips and iron brew.
Fantastic. I think this is probably the best one yet. So once again, thanks to everyone for becoming a patron as well. Thank you so much. So thanks to once again to everyone who's come on the stream. Thanks to the mods. Thanks to all the donations, and thanks to all of your kind comments and funny comments and your insults to my accent and abilities and my lack of ability to do accent. So have a great weekend, guys. I'll see you all, I hope, on Tuesday evening at the same bat time, same bat channel. I won't be hiding in a fridge like Boris Johnson, but I will be staying alert like Boris Johnson tells us all to do. So wash those hands, wear that mask, and I'll see you all next week. And have a good weekend.